How you doing, guys? Last night, I had some time on my hands, so I took a drive through my old neighborhood. It had been 10 years since I moved out of there. This is one of the few places I actually could call home. So much of it had changed, but so much of it still stayed the same. I'm talking to a few of the neighbors here and there, and stopped by my old house to take a look at it. It had been redone, remodeled. It was unreal. Used to live next door to two guys for a while. They're decent guys. They used to like to party with us on occasion. Guy and his nephew. Well, they got along. Seemed like they'd be living there forever. Problem was, one day, the uncle had met a girl. Soon after moved in with her, left the nephew all alone. He was kind of felt slighted about it, and I'm like, well, that's what happens. Guys meet women and they move in with them. And he was kind of down in the dumps because he didn't have anybody, and he never had that much luck with women. And he says, well, where do I go to meet somebody? And I just thought about it, that's just something that happens. I was never much into clubbing because he suggested, should I go to a club? And I'm like, no, because you don't want to live with a girl you meet at the club, let alone marry them. Oh, and he asked me where I met them. And any old place that I happen to go, grocery store, laundromat, the corner store, just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I didn't know what else to tell him. Well, a couple of months goes by and he starts coming home with this one girl he had met. Nice kid she was. And I asked him, he was talking to me about her. I said, well, where'd you meet her? I said, I work with her. And I'm like, oh, cool. Well, over the next year, they start hanging out, and she's always over the house. My dog loved her because every time she came over, she would give the dog a treat. And my dog, you didn't even have to see them coming. You could hear the car, and that tail would start wagging because she knew she was going to get a treat. Wasn't long before they got married. I was happy for the guy because in all the years I had known him, this was the happiest I had ever seen him. I mean, they had the same problems everybody else did, but they were working them out pretty well. They were actually one of the happiest couples I've ever met. He came home alone one night, and he was really down, so he came out to talk to us while we were having a few beers on the driveway. And we asked him what was up, and he says, she's in the hospital. They think she has cancer. We're like, well, they're not sure, right? And they're like, no, they just think it. As it was, she did have cancer. Now, he was kind of bummed out, but he stuck by her. As the months progressed, the treatments weren't working. And she was getting worse and worse and worse. Even though she did put a game face on, she always had a smile on her face. And he would try to keep her cheered up all the time, but you can see what he was wearing on him. Not through the grapevine. While she was in the hospital undergoing treatments, and she had passed away. And really, what do you say to somebody when somebody passes away? In all honesty, as little as possible. Well, he came outside one night after she had passed, and we were just sitting there talking till we didn't bring it up, but we just let him vent about the whole thing. And he said to me, he says, we were so happy. Why did this happen so quickly? We weren't even married a year. And I said to him, I says, I don't know how he took it, but I said it anyways. He's like, some people aren't happy in their entire lifetime. You were probably happier in those short 8 months than most people will be happy in their entire lives. And he kind of nodded in agreement. Then he says, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I says, just pick up the pieces and move on as best you can. And he says to me, he says, well, should I get remarried? And I'm like, no, why would you want to do that? You don't even know anybody at this point in time. Well, as time went on, a few weeks had passed, he met this girl. And he told me about her. Oh, she's just like her. And when I hear something like that, I'm thinking, no, she probably is not. She probably is the furthest thing, but I kept my mouth shut. Well, he moved out of the house, moved in with her. Ran into his uncle a few months later, kind of find out he wasn't doing so well. She was a complete horror show. She may have appeared to be like his deceased wife on the outside, but she was nothing like that on the inside. He broke up with her. And over the next few years, every woman he found was the same thing, only worse than the last. And he got himself into a rut. And unfortunately, how many people do you know? They get themselves into these ruts and they move on and move on and move on. And each person is just like the last. It's almost like you tear down your old house, take the old bricks to build a new house. Technically, it's still the same house. And I've seen more people complain about their relationships, only to find somebody else that's almost identical. I can think of a certain organization that I could compare to a bad relationship. And yes, where I'm going with this, Jehovah's Witnesses. Towards the end, actually quite a few years before I even left, I realized it wasn't for me. I knew something wasn't right with this, because the thing was, my confidence was down. And now, a person I used to smile all the time, all of a sudden I smiled very little. I was miserable. I was wore out, very unhappy. And it was all because of this organization, because not only was I miserable there, but it affected my entire life on the outside. Because I wasn't the happy-go-lucky person I used to be. And a lot of people around me noticed that. I accidentally came across the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses on YouTube some years ago, and I was amazed at how many of them were out there. And at the time, I couldn't get enough of it. For hours, I would sit there watching them. Now, I didn't know anybody at the time, so they were pretty much on an even keel. As time went on, I had my favorites, and I stopped watching some, started watching some a little bit more. And of course, some you just stop watching. Some you eventually just don't like at all. I saw one, actually, I'd only seen a couple of his videos. I'm not going to mention any names, but he likes to vacation in Thailand. And one of the first videos I watched him on, now the guy sounded very intelligent, but all of a sudden was hitting his viewers up for money. He was wanted to publish a book, so he was hitting them up for money, and that right there turned me right off. One thing I have never done, no matter how bad things have gotten for me financially, was beg for money. Yeah, I've taken out loans, but I've also paid them back. And just something about it just doesn't rub me right. And I noticed one thing. Every one of us that was one time Jehovah's Witness, we learned something from the organization. For the most part, we all relay our experience to possibly current Jehovah's Witnesses or those who are just leaving. We relay our experiences. There's also some unscrupulous ones that learn something from the organization and how to manipulate. Guys, I got to get some coffee. Now, the thing is, most Jehovah's Witnesses, when they leave, they're in a very vulnerable state. It's kind of like the person who's had a bad relationship that they've gotten away. They're very susceptible to the same thing. And unfortunately, in the last few years, I've seen several people out there that know how to manipulate, that know how to tug at the heartstrings. Does anybody remember JW Abuse Hotline a few years ago? That was a master shyster from the get-go. Luckily, enough people figured him out and he floundered. He's gone somewhere, who knows where he is. But he wasn't the only one. There's another one that is still going. And unfortunately, a situation he got himself in last year kind of hurt him badly, kind of exposed what kind of person he was. Unfortunately, he still has a large following. Now, there's a few ex-JWs out in YouTube land who take what they do to heart, and they put their life's blood into their activism, and they will basically bend over backwards to help anyone. And sometimes when you find out that you're giving your all to help these people get out of this organization, and they also help those that have left, and yet they're following a shyster like Tie Man. It kind of hurts. But the thing is, you can't let it. Just remember, you can offer a helping hand to anybody, but not everybody's going to take it. Some people know how to tickle the ears. If they're going to do that, do not take it personal. You offered that help. They didn't want it. Simply move on. As I know one YouTuber who was pretty hurt a few weeks ago that I watched. I'm not going to mention them by names, but you can't take it personal. There's just too many people out there that appreciate what you've done. For those that want the help from this other person, if they want to be used, there's nothing you can do about it. If they're going to put this guy on a pedestal, there's nothing you can do about it. They have basically traded off these 10 Goombas in Warwick for another Goomba. There's nothing you can do about that. It's not your fault. You offered the help. But one of these days, they're going to wake up and they're going to realize it. Like I said, I'm very funny when it comes to people pushing money. And I've never liked it. That's why whenever this, what was his name? Kevin Teppo. That's why I went after him, tooth and nail. It was several weeks. People were giving me information on the son of a bitch. And then I finally went after him. But there are others. And there will always be others. See, most of us want to see Watchtower fall. But there are XJWs out there that don't want to see it fall because they're making a living at it. As long as Watchtower's out there, they're going to be making money. See, to make my money, I work a job. Most of us do. But some people are shady. They want to make money the same way Watchtower does, by tugging at people's heartstrings. They're scum of the earth. But you're not going to follow other people from following them and believing everything they say. Nothing you can do about it. But to the person who was really hurt over this, just think twice. You've helped so many people, but you can't help the entire world. Not everybody wants to be helped. Anyways, guys, that's all I wanted to mention today. I'm just going to sit down and relax for a while. You all have a good day. I'll be talking to you soon.